Velasco, and thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there will be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled for nothing.
And only here, para sa bayan.
And that's the opening bell for Round by Round, brought to you by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, welcome world. I'm Boy at Season.
And I'm Ryan Sunglier. Dennis Principe joins us later on in the show.
On this edition of Round by Round, we will now talk about a new boxing promotions company that has recently been creating a lot of buzz, positioning itself as a global next generation media and boxing company. And this company, Probellium, has signed one of the big names of boxing, our very own Nonito Donaire Jr. And as of late, has signed up another Filipino boxing champion, right?
Yes, so that unnamed Filipino boxing champion is none other than Donnie Nietes Ahas, the four-division world champion who has fought just once in about the last three years. So he's someone that a lot of boxing fans, particularly in the Philippines, have been clamoring to see again because it's almost like his story just went off the air. It's like a television show, and it's like when The Sopranos, they had that one year where they didn't have an entire season and you had to wait 2 years. We're waiting 3 years. So we're trying to see the show's finale. We want to see how this concludes. And I had the opportunity to talk to Richard Schaefer, the president of Probellum, and we talked about Nietes, and he says that he believes that Nietes will be back on December 11th. That's the date that they have in mind. Coincidentally, Probellum had won the purse bid for the WBO bantamweight title fight between General Casimero and Paul Butler. That fight will either happen in the UK or Dubai, and that's also being eyed for December 11th. So you put two and two together, it looks like Nietes may be back on the same card as his fellow former trainee in Cebu. They trained together, training partner, General Casimero.
You know, if only for that void that has been left for Donnie Ahas Nietes, it's not really simply because that he didn't want, he's been, there have been no opportunities for him. But I don't know if you will agree with me, Ryan. It's more of people, of other fighters, not really wanting to get at it with him. Am I correct in assuming that?
I think that Nietes has always been sort of a high risk, low reward fight. He's someone once commented, and someone commented recently on one of my stories that Nietes is the best fighter that you've never seen. So Nietes's problem has always been that the way he was promoted, at least, was that he fought to keep the title, not to really impress people, because you're not going to bring the big fights to the Philippines. That just wasn't going to happen. So he had to venture out. And then when he did venture out, he didn't really fight anybody. So, but I think that also you have to look at mismanagement as part of it, because Nietes has made some unusual career choices. Instead of, when he won the WBO junior bantamweight title at 115 pounds, instead of defending it against the mandatory challenger, Aston Palicte, whom Nietes had gotten a draw with, and a lot of people think he really beat him, he vacated the belt. Said, I don't want to fight Palicte again. Palicte was, a good fighter, but he wasn't a killer, and then Palicte went out there and got beat by, a fellow Filipino journeyman. So, and then when he didn't have a belt, so why would you take the chance if you didn't have the belt? So that was sort of Nietes's problem as well.
Let's focus a bit on the company, Ryan. Probellium, one of the main persons behind Probellium is Richard Schaefer, who used to be connected with Golden Boy Promotions. What do you think prompted Richard Schaefer to form his own company?
Well, I think he's been in the business of trying to find his niche in the sport, find his vehicle. he had another previous company, Ringstar, which Donaire had also been involved with. So Schaefer has been in the business for about 20 years. He has a lot of experience, and he's built up a lot of connections within the business. For Nonito Donaire's next fight, it's a mandatory defense against Ray Marcaballo. He'll be working with PBC. Schaefer had a big hand in building up the early PBC cards through the partnership with Golden Boy. So he has a lot of connections, and he's the kind of person who knows how to work with different people. He's been prior to boxing. He's been in business. That's his. He was a banker, so he has a lot of experience working with combustible parts, and that's something you need to have in boxing.
Probellium, according to its press release, said that they will be supporting a lot of grassroots activity on a global level, as well as will be a conduit, or they will work closely between rival promoters and distribution platforms, and would like to position itself as a unifying factor for the boxing industry. Now, how feasible will this be to co-promote with everyone simply because of all the politics that's involved in it? Will it even be feasible for them?
I think it helps if you're not married to a platform the way that a lot of the top promoters are. Like, so PBC, they are married to Showtime and Fox, and they need to feed the beast. So it may not work out for them to put one of the bigger fights on ESPN and work with Top Rank. Top Rank would also not be so inclined to do the same, on another platform. But I spoke with Richard Schaefer about this, and Schaefer was saying, that yes, he understands that for Nietes, for instance, a lot of the big fights are, would have to be made with different promoters. Suisakit Sorang Visay, Roman Chocolate Tito Gonzalez, Juan Francisco Estrada. They have promotion. They have deals with Eddie Hearn. So you'd have to work with those guys to make the fight. But he says, listen, I've made deals with so many different promoters. So I think he understands what it is. And I think, but sometimes it just takes getting to the table and finding common ground with promoters and explaining why this fight has to happen, why it should happen. Sometimes it's about, trying to find the upper hand in a deal. I remember Don King telling me about when he made his first big deal, and you had to kind of fudge things up a little bit. He had Ernie Shavers, who was probably the most murderous one-punch knockout artist of all time, and they needed an opponent for Jimmy Young, and so Don King's like, yeah, I gotta call up, Ernie Shavers' girlfriend, see if he's in the gym training. I don't know. He's gotta see if he can get off of work. Meanwhile, Ernie Shavers is in the gym every day. He's ready to fight, and so yeah, send him the contract. We'll make that fight happen. And then Shavers goes out there and just destroys Jimmy Young in one round. So sometimes you have to do whatever you have to do to make the fight.
Well, we are, of course, very excited as to what Probellium will be doing, considering that we already mentioned Nonito Donaire, one of the big names that have been signed up with them. Even Butler has already been signed with them as well. So Casimero, Butler, will be happening very, very soon, and we will be keeping all of you up to date with the next things that will happen under the Probellium Boxing Promotion stable. Now, let's talk about our second topic today, and I'm very excited about this because this, for you, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you boxing fans, you will get a big kick out of this because I myself was very surprised to know about all the information regarding boxing greats who have fought in the Philippines. A lot of big names have actually been on our shores to fight. And we start off with a name that might not be too familiar with Filipino fans. His name is Eder Henry from Brazil, who was active between the years of 1957 till 1976. Tell us more about Edero Free, Ryan Sunglier.
Well, like you said, a lot of people may not be familiar with him because he really was like fighting during a time when the smaller weights, especially, weren't getting the exposure that they deserve. But he may be the greatest bantamweight of all time. He was a champion who fought all over the world, fought in his opponent's hometowns. He traveled when he had to travel, and he only had 2 losses to the great Fighting Harada of Japan. So that's in itself a feather in the cap. That the only 2, and I think they were by majority and split decision in Japan. So it should tell you how competitive those fights were. But Eder Joffrey was the first, I believe, vegetarian boxing champion. And he's still going. Yeah.
Oh, he lost to Japan. He was eating a lot of sushi.
There we go. And so he, I just spoke with him. He's going strong at 85 years old. And we talked about actually when he fought in the Philippines, when he fought Johnny Hamito at Araneta Coliseum in 1963. He said he got to the country and the heat and humidity almost knocked him out the moment he got off the plane. And he was like feeling like weak, and he had 200 grams to, I think that's like half a pound or so to lose before the weigh-in. And all he had to do was go out there and jog for 15 minutes, and the weight came off immediately, and he made the weight. And he beat Johnny Hamito and retained his size.
And remember, Ryan, in 1963, the Araneta Coliseum was not the Araneta Coliseum that most of us know to be now. The Araneta Coliseum at that time did not have air conditioning.
It has it now?
Yeah. No, they didn't have air conditioning at that time in 1963. And at that time, they allowed people to smoke inside the Araneta Coliseum. And imagine the spotlights inside the ring, the humidity, the heat. They only had big electric fans and rotating fans up above that provided the ventilation. So it was really really warm. What were the titles that were at stake when Eder fought Johnny?
What was the bantamweight championship? Later on, Joffrey would when he retired for 3 years, he came back and won a featherweight championship after his comeback. But at this time, this is, I believe, right after the titles had split, because it was originally he won the NBA championship, which was like one of the the sanctioned bodies at the time, and then it just became the World Bantamweight Championship, and that was it. You have the World Bantamweight Championship. And then the title split, the WBC and the WBA, and that kind of kicked off what we have now, where we have like 4 titles, and soon there'll be 100 titles.
Multiple boxing organizations. Now let's move over so that we can get more of these fighters in. Larry Holmes, yes, ladies and gentlemen, heavyweight Larry Holmes fought in the Philippines in 1975. Who did he fight here? And and why did that fight happen in 1975 at the Araneta Coliseum, Ryan?
I think there was a big heavyweight card that year. They may have been doing like some heavyweight palooza thing. But yeah, it was on this card called the Thrill in Manila, and Larry Holmes, who would later on go on to become like heavyweight champion as well. He was the chief sparring partner for Muhammad Ali. So, what they say, when in the Philippines, have a fight.
Well, everybody remembers the Araneta Coliseum, but very few even remember who were the undercards in that particular fight. And Larry Holmes fought Rodney Bobick in that card. I think they were the... Were they? Was that the penultimate before the main card of the Ali Frazier fight? Did they come right before the Ali Frazier fight?
Either that one, or I believe Rolando Navarrete's fight.
Right.
So I wonder how Larry Holmes may have adjusted to that fight, like, because between rounds, some guy at ringside is asking him for a light.
Yes, they were smoking in Araneta in 1975. Okay, from Kazakhstan, a person who has also been being bombarded by requests for him to get back into the ring. Gennady Golovkin fought in the Philippines, believe it or not, and tell us your story, which appeared in
Oh yeah.
very
So when
controversial.
Golovkin was back on the comeback trail, he was fighting Steve Rolls. So we went to the press conference, and afterwards, I didn't want to take up the regular time of talking, the questions about the fight. I said, hey, you fought in the Philippines once back in 2004, and that was the Asian Championships. Can you tell me about it? And he said, I don't remember much. I just remember it was easy. And I'm like, well, it must be good to be really great at boxing, even the things I do good, they're not easy. So it must be
But
boxing must be awesome for him.
tell us about who he fought for that Asian Championships that was held in Puerto Princesa in Palawan.
Yeah, so in the gold medal match, he fought Christopher Kamat, the Filipino American from California. And that was sort of what was interesting to me about it, was because when Golovkin was becoming a bigger name worldwide in boxing, I decided to go and look for Christopher Kamat, and I found him on Facebook, and we did a great interview, and I wrote a story, about the Filipino who fought Golovkin, and how their kind of careers went different ways. And Christopher Kamat was a product of the Northern Michigan University boxing program, and there were a lot of hopes that sort of the way that the PBA looks to fill foreigners, and looks towards Phil American basketball players. There was this idea maybe we can do the same thing with boxers. So Kamat, had competed at, I believe, the 2004 Olympics. So I had gotten interested in his story, and I was hoping that Golovkin would have this great story about, oh yeah, I went there and I trained just on local coconuts and things like that. It's like, yeah, it was easy. All right.
Drank the fruit from the land, ate corn, things like that.
Yeah, knock some people out.
And in the afternoons, I will take a dip in the swim in the sea.
Nothing like that.
Get a massage from the locals who were just hanging around on the island.
Yeah, he was like, I'm on Terminator mode.
Okay, our next fighter that we'll be talking about that also fought in the Philippines, and this guy has a really, really famous record from Panama. Hilario Zapata.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zapata. You talk about a road warrior. That's what Zapata was. And I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame. Very skilled, technical fighter. You think of Panama boxing, you think of Roberto Duran. He was not Roberto Duran. He was more almost like a Muhammad Ali style fighter. Very flashy, and he fought the great Dodi Boy Peñalosa, and at Ultra. Zapata was a very slick fighter, and he was giving Peñalosa a lot of problems. There was one, I think there was the big moment for Peñalosa in that fight was there was maybe, I think, some confusion over the time. And I think that Zapata thought the round was over, and Peñalosa just went out there and just cracked him. No. What it was is that Peñalosa landed an accidental low blow, and then while Zapata was complaining, Peñalosa cracked him. So yeah, that was Zapata wound up winning the decision, but that was a pretty fun moment for him.
Finally, as far as the 5 fighters that we've featured for this particular segment of our program, is Stanley Sadler, an American who fought between the years of 1944 and 1956, whose record is a staggering 145 wins, 104 by knockout, 16 losses, only one. He was knocked out once, and that was on his second fight as a professional, and had 2 losses. And who did he fight, Mr. Sunglier?
He fought the great Flash Elorde. And, this was an interesting time in boxing because, you had particularly fighters who fought in different countries. You would have the first fight would take place in one fighter's home country, and then the rematch would take place. And so it was always like a 2-fight deal, right? So Stanley Sadler, who was one of the most vicious featherweight champions of all time. He took a non-title fight against Flash Lorde, and really it was a great moment for Lorde. Even though it was a non-title fight, Lorde was able to go out there and get a victory over one of the all-time greats of boxing. Stanley Sadler, of course, was best remembered for his 4-fight series with Willie Pep, where he just destroyed Willie Pep using all sorts of tactics. Like he was a murderous puncher, don't get me wrong, but he was also like one of the most dirty fighters. Used the heel of his glove, used the thumb, headbutt you, whatever you can do. So Lorde gets to win the non-title fight. Then they have the rematch in California at the Cow Palace, and this was before they had the accidental headbutt or accidental headbutt rule. And so Lorde gets cut by some headbutts and some other kind of questionable tactics, and winds up losing a stoppage on cuts. But just to go all those rounds with a punch like that just shows you how tough Lorde was.
Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, there are more fighters that actually fought in the Philippines, and hopefully Ryan and I will be able to do a part 2 of this discussion. For the next segment of today's program, we're going to turn it over to our colleague, Dennis Principe.
Thank you very much, Boyet and Ryan. Usapang Carl James Martin muna tayo. And it's been 7 or 8 months. Nung huli po siyang lumaban. Tinalo po niya si Joe Tejones sa kanyang laban po dyan sa may Binyan, Laguna. And maraming nagtatanong sa atin ngayon. Marami po ang nag-i-inquire kung ano na ba ang latest sa kanya. Well, meron po tayong mga makikikwento na major developments, so to speak. Kung pag-uusapan po natin ay itong upcoming sensation mula po dyan sa Ifugao. Pero bago natin ibigay yung ilan sa mga masabi natin talagang development dito sa patang ito. Medyo nakaka-intriga lang yung nakita ko po na post ng isa po sa mga kilalang personalities pagdating po sa sport na boxing. We're talking about Sean Gibbons, ang presidente po ng MP Promotions ni Senator Manny Pacquiao. And alam naman po natin na ito pong si Sean Gibbons ay malapit sa mga Filipino boxers. Marami po sa ating mga boxers dito po sa Pilipinas ang tinutulungan po niya. Actually, kung titignan po natin, kahit na yung mga hindi officially under MP Promotions, basta Pilipino at kailangan ng laban, ay nabibigyan po ni Sean Gibbons ng break ng pagkakataon. Na ba't ko po nabanggit yan? In one of his posts sa kanyang Facebook account, meron siyang niretweet na kung titignan natin, magtatanong ka bakit. Meron siyang niretweet na supposedly laban po ni Carl James Martin against reigning Filipino Super Bantamweight Champion, Philippine Super Bantamweight Champion Mark Anthony Heraldo. Although yung story na yun nakalagay po ay November 28. Actually, ko-correct lamang po natin yan mamaya. But yun nga, bakit na-post, bakit ni-retweet or shinare ni Sean Gibbons itong storya about Carl James Martin? Alam mo naman po natin, with all due respect kay Mark Anthony Heraldo, di hamak na mas marami po ang nag-aabang na balita dito kay Carl James Martin. Because for one, he's turning out to be an exciting prospect, 17-0, 15 knockouts ang kanyang record. Umakyat pa ngayon ng timbang, super bantamweight. Na alam naman natin na marami po ang mga matitigas na mga boxers sa timbang na yan. Does this mean na mapupunta sa MP Promotions si Carl James Martin? Ito ba isang senyales na nagkakasundo na sila or meron na silang kasunduan? Kasi alam nyo, marami sa mga fans ni Carl James Martin talagang halos nananawagan na dapat kunin na ni Pacquiao itong batang ito. Naniniwala sila na kung siya ipupunta kay Manny Pacquiao, matutulungan ng gusto ang karir ng batang ito. But on the other hand, sabi nga po natin, meron din namang mga natutulungan na boxers, si Sean Gibbons, kahit na hindi officially under the MP promotions. And another thing, no, na dapat din natin tingnan, si Sean Gibbons ay marami rin itong mga connections with different American outfits, Top Rank, Golden Boy, even itong bago, itong Probelium, lalo na ngayon ang Probelium napakasigasig sa pagkuha po ng mga boksingero, sa kanilang stable para sila ang maging promoter. Ang balita po natin, talaga nagbubuhos po ng pera itong Probelium para makabuo ng grupo ng mga boxers na magbibigay ng magandang panimula sa kanilang promotions. So para sa atin, although wala pong official statement pa from Sean Gibbons and from Carl James Martin at yung kanyang kampo, nakaka-intriga kung titignan po natin. But if ever man, ako I'm quite sure mukhang merong involvement si Sean Gibbons dito kay Carl James Martin. As to how at kung anong extent, kung yun ba magiging tulay na para mapunta siya sa MP Promotions or another promotional outfit, yun lang ang maganda ron, for sure. Mukhang meron na talagang linaw. Yung kagustuhan ng mga fans si Carl James Martin na finally ay pumirma po ng isang promotional deal. Itong fighter from Ifugao, young fighter from Ifugao, dahil up to now, free agent pa rin si Carl James Martin. Now, moving forward dito po sa laban po or next fight ni Carl James Martin, ang balita nga po natin si Mark Anthony Heraldo, ang kanyang makakalaban, at alam po natin si promoter Kukoy Elorde ay nakabuo na po ng card, top billed by Charlie Suarez, meron po siyang makakalaban na undefeated boxer si Dave Pelio, At ang balita po natin, undercard po niyan ay itong Philippine Championship between defending champion Mark Anthony Heraldo at Carl James Martin. Ito pong unbeaten prospect na pinag-usapan nga po natin ngayon. And ang ating pong napuong informasyon is that December 4 magaganap ang card na yan. And malamang-lamang dito po sa NCR because the first ever NCR boxing promotion since the pandemic ay naisagawa po kamakailan ng Elorde Promotions, nina John Elorde at Giza Elorde. So magandang step na po yan. Wala na po siguro makakapigil na magkaroon po ng sunod-sunod na mga promotions dito po sa NCR. At yun po yung balita natin, si Coco Elorde, he will be putting up this card. That will feature also si Carl James Martin dito po sa NCR, to be particular dyan po sa Elorde Sports Complex. Now, how important is this fight for Carl James Martin? Ito na yung inaantay natin na test para po sa batang ito. Medyo matagal na rin po yung inactivity ni Mark Anthony Heraldo, but at the same time, ito rin naman si Martin, although during the pandemic, nakadalawang laban na po, pero ito na naman, nagkaroon naman ng mahabang break. Putol-putol, actually, mas mahirap yun. May laban, wala. Dapat nung June pa sila naglaban, na move to, I believe, August, and then wala nangyari because of an injury at ilang pang mga issues regarding Mark Anthony Heraldo. But ang info na nakuha po natin, isang pirma na lang. Si Heraldo na lang inaantay na pumirma sa kontrata at tiyak na po mangyayari itong Philippine title shot ni Carl James Martin against defending champion Mark Anthony Heraldo. Abangan po ninyo ang mga developments yan dito po sa ating program Round by Round. In the meantime, ako po muli si Dennis Principe. Balik tayo ka na Boyet and Ryan.
Thanks, Dennis. And now let's go to our fearless forecast brought to you by Eastern Communications, as we have a fight that will happen by the end of the month as Phil Britain Youssef Kumari goes up against Jorge David Castañeda for the vacant WBC International Silver Super Featherweight title at the O2 Arena in London. Who will come out the winner of this fight, Ryan?
Yeah, so we're talking about Youssef Kumari, who is a Filipino Brit fighter, and he's going up against Jorge David Castañeda, and that's going to be a super featherweight bout. This is an interesting situation because Kumari is really taking a step up in his career, and he wants to get some attention and momentum going as he tries to fight for a world title opportunity. With the main event, which was supposed to be between Dillian White and Otto Wallen, that fight was canceled after. Yeah, so White got injured. So that fight, the main event isn't happening. They're proceeding with a new main event. The fight will still take place on October 30th. So Kumari has an opportunity to really fill in some of the void of the attention that will fall out of the card as a result. So interesting to see how that goes. Kumari is a good counterpuncher. He has some power, and just looking forward to seeing how he steps up. But I believe that Kumari should be able to get past Castaneda. I think that's this level of fighter. Kumari is clearly above. I just want to see how effectively he can do it, how efficiently he can do it. So that will give me an idea of what he does at the next level.
And that's our Fearless Forecast, brought to you by Eastern Communications. And that's the final bell for this episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Boyet Cesar.
And I'm Ryan Sunglier. We're on Facebook at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and on our YouTube channel right after. So like, follow, share, and subscribe now.
On the next edition of Round by Round will be Bill Velasco, Ryan Sunglier, and yours truly that will be answering the bell. This has been Round by Round, all boxing, all Filipino, all the time. Take care.